Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Crusader Coaching Podcast. My name is Mauro
I'm Shiv Taylor.
and today we've got quite a good one for you all today, watching or listening, depending on where you are viewing us from. So today we're going to talk about one of my second favorite superpowers, or one of my top three, I should say.
This is a
Maybe
lot.
not my second, but it's my top three, is the superpower of communication. And I love this superpower because it really forms a foundation of everything. What do you think about that, Shiv? What do you think about the superpower of communication?
Absolutely. And like many other superpowers, I mean, it could really save the day. Just having effective communication. I mean, I could think of many times where very small things have become big mistakes when it could have been solved by simply just talking and laying it out properly instead of being ambiguous or assuming things. So 100% I have to agree. I can't even begin to name on, two hands. Like I'd need like maybe 5 or 6 hands where a miscommunication has caused some problems for me. So this
Wow.
is a very important superpower for sure.
Wow. And
I
if I
think top three
find
for me as well. Top three for me as well.
if I find an extra couple of hands for you, I'll let you know,
Yeah.
because I might need some as well. So
I'm thinking at the end of the year we're gonna need to make like a tier list of all the powers.
yes.
A tier.
Yes. Oh my gosh, that's good. Oh, that's great. I like that. We'll have like a tiers for the superpowers that we do in our content. Oh my gosh, that's good. So let's go ahead and just kind of get right to it. So all right, so one of my favorite questions is the how would you rate yourself question. So it's kind of one of my favorite questions, and I use it a lot when it comes to coaching and my own self-development as well. So how would you rate yourself in a 1 to 10 scale for your communication?
I would have to say it really depends from moment to moment. If I had to give myself an average, I'd go around, honestly, I'm not like a 6 or a 7, nothing crazy. But I think there are moments where I've been like a 9 or a 10, for example. Like I know there's been plenty of times where someone's been texting me or trying to arrange plans and the text messages are not going, going over clearly or something. There's confusion on many sides. The number one thing I do in those kind of situations is I'll just pick up the phone and I will call them and I'll just say, like, what is happening? What is happening exactly? Let's just lay it down now. Now, obviously I don't always do that, so I can't give myself the higher score.
Yeah.
But I think really just when I choose to be that straightforward kind of, let's just lay it down now, I'd say my level goes pretty high. Because sometimes, the most simple kind of communication is going to be the most effective.
Yeah. And that's actually something that is very important, because there are different methods of communication, and one of the most important things is actually being able to choose which piece which form or medium of communication would be the most effective. And sometimes a lot of things can either be handled in a meeting, sometimes things can be handled over an email, and sometimes things have to be kind of handled, face to face, one on one. And
Exactly.
sometimes, the Zoom calls now, because of the pandemic, has kind of become kind of the go-to thing for most things. And honestly, it kind of gives you the real benefit of being in person with someone, other than the fact that you can't really touch. And sometimes with connection issues, you might talk over someone. Like that happens sometimes. But being able to choose the right medium is important. And we'll dive more into that subject in part 2 of our podcast in a couple of weeks. But today, I really want to talk about, I guess, what makes communication important, right? So I myself, for example, I would probably rate myself at about an 8.5 to a 9. And the reason why I would rate myself there is because, I mean, I've gone through a lot of coaching training specifically on communication, because if you don't have good communication, then as a coach, your business just won't work. It just won't. Because when you're talking about working with people and working with clients and working with business partners like you and myself, anything that involves people, if you don't have good communication, forget it. It's just not going to fly. It's not going to go anywhere. So I had to really be intentional with my own communication, and specifically with the listening portion, because I think a lot of times people think of communication as kind of a one-way street, even though they don't do it intentionally. A lot of times people just speak and they don't let the other person respond. They don't really listen. So I've been very intentional about that, and my communication over the last 2 years has skyrocketed. The reason why I say it's not a 10 is because there are moments, for example, I'm not perfect, I'm a human being, where maybe if I don't organize myself accordingly, there may be an email that gets missed or a communication that I kind of put off until later because I'm too busy. And so sometimes organization is very important with dealing with communication. You have to be organized, because sometimes you can have so many messages coming in, and you really have to get good at filtering and prioritizing that.
Up, honestly, like, people may not think about it, but like self-communication in a way.
Yes.
Like the way you write down your plan for a day, like a checklist, for example, is like self-communication. You are telling yourself what you need to do. And when we talk about miscommunications, for example, honestly, for me, the main miscommunications I have are self. Yeah, so I'm not communicating with myself properly, whether it's, making a list or having a schedule, something like that. So I think what you were saying there, absolutely. I mean, because people always think it's just, communication is telling someone like precise instructions, for example, when in reality, if you don't even, communicate with yourself, then yeah, obviously you're going to miscommunicate with others when you try to spread that information.
It's funny because a lot of times when people think about talking to themselves, there's this idea that it's crazy to do that. I don't think so. I don't think it's crazy to have a conversation with yourself. I'm not saying it always has to be one out loud, but I don't think it's crazy for you to sit down and think and just ask yourself questions and kind of run through your day.
It's not crazy at all. I think everyone does that naturally anyway. They just don't consider talking to themselves. But thinking is essentially talking to yourself, is it not?
It really is. It's exactly that. And I find that when you really block out time to do that, it's actually very effective. And, I think a lot of times people undervalue the productivity increase that can come from a plan.
Yeah.
So if you I had a coach that would say this all the time. He would say that 1 hour of planning is equivalent to 3 days of execution. So if you plan for 1 hour, you have the next 3 days of your life done. Now, in the investing world, you spend 1 hour of your time for 72 hours of productivity, a 72 times return, 7,200% of return. That doesn't exist. So if you really plan accordingly, you can get a huge return, as long as you have that plan be something that you can execute and it's actionable. And that's what makes the time valuable, is that you plan for action. So the two things always come together. And when you have, for example, communications with people, miscommunications can sometimes pop up. Today, I actually had a very funny one. I was actually talking to one of my other business partners that were making a board game together. And the funny thing is that we were talking about the Facebook account for our game. And we have the same login, the same password for all of our accounts for continuity purposes, because it's easy that way, right? And then it was funny because we kept talking about the Facebook account. He said, I can't get in. And I said, what do you mean? It's the same login. I didn't change anything. But then what I realized is that it's not a Facebook account. It's a Facebook page
So he
that
already
we're
had.
both admins on.
Yeah.
And I was like, wait a minute, there's no need to log in. And I sent her the picture of both him and I as the admins. And I was like, well, crap, like there's a miscommunication right there because we've been talking about apples instead of talking about applesauce, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, yeah, just that one word there from account to a page, you know? I mean, it created kind of a miscommunication there.
And that's what makes effective communication so important because what makes effective communication important is that it does a couple things. Number one, it saves resources. And what I mean by resources is that it saves you time, it saves you money, and it also saves you mental and physical energy when things are communicated properly and you don't have to go over them 2, 3, 4 times.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it also creates a better use of your resources. So when you actually have a communication plan set up, not only are you saving time because you are actually communicating, you're also using that time wisely because you're coming in with an agenda and you're coming in with something that's executable and actionable, and that makes things a lot easier and quicker. So it's a better use of your time, your energy, and if you're paying an employee or if this is your job, you're saving yourself and creating better use of your money. And sometimes it could even create additional resources. Now, what do I mean by that? Is when you sit down and you actually have effective communication, sometimes new ideas come up and those new ideas can be breakthroughs. Like when you sit down and you plan and you communicate in a meeting, let's say you're talking about a project and you've got effective communication in place, you never know what the other people in that meeting may come up with. And that might actually be like it might be a new revenue stream. It might improve the product. It might change things and make it more successful. So you might even create some more money when you effectively communicate. And that's why I think that the superpower of communication really is a superpower, because it can do so much when you actually sit down and do it right.
And if you do it wrong, it could also do so much. You know, something actually that just came to me when we were talking about the time aspect. I remember one of the probably the biggest miscommunication I've ever been a part of was for a birthday party for my friend, and we're all going to go to this restaurant.
Oh, no.
However, it's not a chain. It's not a chain, but it was. I guess this restaurant had. There was another restaurant maybe an hour away of the same name.
Oh no! Oh no!
Yes. So when he was looking up the restaurant, both of the names were the same, and he sent the wrong address to half of the people in the group, and the other half got the right address. And I remember thinking, you know, the whole dinner was derailed like for 2 hours. Like we went to Miami wearing these nice suits and stuff. We pulled up at this restaurant, and he was like, "No, not that one." Yeah.
Wow.
And what, you know, the dinner was like 2 hours late because you had to wait for everyone to come. Like, and imagine what a simple just double checking the communication would have done. If you just double checked, clicked on it and said, "Oh, this is an hour away, not 15 minutes," you know? So absolutely. I mean, to think about how much time we lost, how much gas we lost, that's money, I suppose, you know?
Money,
so
that's money there too. That's a resource.
this wasn't a major job or a multi-million-dollar deal or something, but still, you know, a birthday party, something like as simple as that, you could still see how if something like this could derail so much time and money. I mean, imagine at work if you were to make a similar, you know, miscommunication.
Yeah, and it's funny because that happened to me too. It actually happened to me about a week ago. Well, actually, let's see, we're in August. We're about to be in August, a week away. No, it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago. I was actually on a date with my girlfriend, and we said we're gonna meet up at Chick-fil-A in Doral, and apparently there's more than one Chick-fil-A in Doral.
Yeah,
and there you go.
Honestly, but yeah.
And it was, we had a good laugh about it. And here's the thing, guys. You know, stuff happens. When it does happen, like it's better to laugh about it and kind of just like just take that as the opportunity to re-communicate
Yeah.
learn and laugh and
Nope,
turn it
that's
into a
so
good
bad.
time, because it happened, right? And especially if it wasn't intentional, it happened, so might as well use it as something positive and kind of, tell like a funny story like we're telling it right now, I guess.
I remember one time for like my first internship at FIU, half of the flyers had the other campus's location on it. So a bunch of people went to the other campus, and if you've been to that school, you know the campuses are like an hour apart from each other. So, and many people are already driving 40 minutes to get there. So, I mean, there's a lot of okay, and we've had to learn how to communicate well too, because I think maybe once or twice we may have messed up the time on one of our flyers or
Yeah.
something, or the date. So, and that could completely change whether or not someone is going to attend one of our events or something. Because
Yeah.
the original day you put, even though it was wrong, that one worked for me.
Yeah.
So
That's so true. I think that, especially since we talk about the value of really kind of prioritizing your day and putting aside time for things. We talk about that a lot with our coaching content, is being intentional as to how you use your time. So if you have a slot for something and that slot ends up going over or being a different time, then it's like, well, then you can't really attend because you might even have something else going on after or before. So that's why it's so important, because you want to respect people's time, especially if you want to offer them something or you want them to attend something that you're doing.
yeah.
That's so important. And I think that when you have, whether if you have a family member that you're looking to improve your communication with, whether if you have a business relationship they want to improve your communication with, whether if it's a team that you lead or that you're a part of that you want to see better communication happen in, that I want you to remember this simple 3-letter word, and it's called CAB. I want you to remember CAB. I want you to imagine that you're taking a taxi cab.
Call cab, yeah.
Yeah, and the destination of this taxi cab is Communication Central. It's like the biggest city communication hub. So that's where this cab is going. This cab is going to Communication City, baby. So CAB. So the C in CAB stands for create clarity. Now, this is so important because
Absolutely.
a lot of times when people do have meetings or when people do communicate with other individuals in their life, they don't speak with specifics. And a lot of times their language can be viewed as ambiguous. And I think especially now in this time of the pandemic, since today we're still in 2020, and I think a lot of times that kind of matters more now because, for example, if you have a company that you're a part of, imagine that you just had a meeting with some of your higher ups, some of the bosses or the executives, and the topic of layoffs comes into the discussion. And they don't really specifically say, hey, like, we have no intentions of laying anyone off. They just say, like, you know what, layoffs may happen. And now you're like, well, is it going to happen? Is it not going to happen? So it's better to say, look, we are planning to cut down our staff by 20% over the next 3 months. And it's not a comfortable conversation, but at least people are prepared for it. Whereas if you kind of come in with this ambiguous language, or you don't really say anything, it's like, well, dang, like, you're going to live with that in the back of your mind, not knowing what's going to happen to your job. And if you're not planning on doing layoffs, then make it clear, like, look, we have no intention of doing any layoffs whatsoever. So be black and white with your communication. Don't leave room in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, something I do, I wouldn't recommend this for everything. So, because, when we're talking today, we're talking about small kind of personal things, restaurant mix-ups, and then your work life, your business life or whatever. But this is something I'd recommend for maybe the small things. Sometimes I won't get back to someone unless I have that black or white answer. If I'm still on a gray area, to avoid the confusion, I'll just wait. It's better than I say this and then 15 minutes later I actually know the thing and then cause confusion. I think sometimes it's better to just figure it out yourself exactly how you want to say it. And when you know you have something concrete, then do it. Obviously, sometimes in your job, in your business, there's time restraints and you can't do that. But for example, you know, get the address of the Chick-fil-A is all I'm saying. And then, then send it. Something like that.
The address of the Chick-fil-A.
I think, the specifics really are going to create the clarity.
That's right. Now, the second letter in CAB is A, for those of you who like to spell. And the A is
Should be a
actually,
lot of us.
what was that?
Should be a lot of us that like to spell, hopefully.
This episode was brought to you by the letter A. So avoid assumptions, all right? So when you communicate with someone, whether if it's a team or an individual, okay, let them ask questions so that way they can clear whatever ideas they have or assumptions they may have of what you just said. And sometimes it may even be a good idea to have them repeat back what you said to them, to see if they really captured the main points. Now, sometimes, they may not be able to give everything back verbatim, but if they give you back the main points, and be very intentional with how you view them. So, listen to their tone, watch their body language, listen to what they're saying, just to make sure that they're following along. That's one of the best things to do to avoid assumptions.
Another thing, it's like, by asking someone to repeat it back, that's kind of like testing your own communication to kind of see how well you did. And for people on the other side, something I recommend is like kind of like an insurance question kind of thing, where you always ask someone like, is there anything else I should know? Or, is there anything else that you would like to add? Or, just like that, just to get everything kind of out there. And because, that if everything hasn't been communicated, obviously that will create assumptions.
Yeah. And it helps to really peak the mind, because when you kind of throw in that safety net question, like you said, it really gets the other person just thinking like, oh, wait, I forgot that. Or, oh, wait.
You're always going to forget stuff. Is natural.
Yeah.
So absolutely, I think you need to have that kind of safety net question. Because the only way to really get rid of assumptions is to just keep asking more questions.
Yeah, that's right. And have the questions be intentional and really think and sit down with your questions. I think a lot of times, and this is kind of a minor sidebar, but it's worth bringing up. We've gotten so used to instant gratification that we kind of don't sit still for too long, and we don't really think. So like, we're moving from thing to thing. We're checking this app. We're opening this thing. We're on this phone call. We're doing this activity, and it's kind of like things have become so fast paced. A lot of times we kind of we forget to just slow down and spend a couple minutes just like thinking and processing what just happened, especially in a conversation that's so key. You have to really be present in that conversation. We're going to talk more about that next time as to how you can be present in that communication.
That's but that's also kind of related to the third part of CAB, B, which is just block out time, which is kind of the same thing as you're saying, getting rid of the distractions, making some time to either plan your day or get something done, or really just plan how you're going to communicate something.
Blocking out time is so important because it shows that you have the commitment to whatever it is that you're going to talk about. So, on your calendar, if you block out a segment of your day and you make it a commitment, then that means that you wouldn't miss it and that you're going to be present for that, barring whatever catastrophe may happen, which is a 1 in a million chance. But when you block out time for something, it really shows the other person like, hey, like I value you and I value your time. And I also ask that you value mine so that we can sit down and talk about this, whether if it's something that needs to be clarified, something that needs to be created, something that needs to be produced. It doesn't matter what it is. But when you block out that time and you sit down with the individual without distractions, it's super key. And next time we'll talk about what are some tips we have as to how you can be more present. Because a lot of times people think, well, I'm just going to have a meeting, sit down. It's like, well, no, like it takes a little bit more than that to be fully present in a conversation. So we're going to go over some conversation tips next time on the second part of our podcast, which is going to focus primarily on creating high quality communication. And that's the key, right? Because there's a lot of low quality communication out there. And so next time we're going to focus on high quality communication and kind of taking all these ideas that we talked about and expanding on them further, but mainly focusing on what makes this more of a higher quality. So that's going to come out in a couple of weeks. And so stay tuned. That release date for that podcast, the second podcast, is actually August 11th, 2020. Yeah. This podcast is going to be released on the 4th of August. So it's actually going to be a week after. And then the following week after that, we're actually going to have our workshop, which is going to be available on YouTube, the Superpower of Communication workshop. In this workshop, we're going to kind of lay out an entire plethora of strategies and real-world transformation-based ideas that can actually level up your personal and professional communication. So if this content was valuable to you, then we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to have you message us. You know, we've got some great social media pages. We've got our Instagram page. We've got our Facebook page. We have our YouTube channel. Feel free to reach out to us on Twitter. And we really want to hear from you because we'd love to answer some of your questions on the air.
Yeah, absolutely. That's probably the main thing we really like to get into, start answering some questions and getting some more involvement from people. So if you're listening to this one and you want to know more, or you want to know even about a different topic, we can make time at the end of the next episode to answer whatever that is. And however you're watching this, you can just leave a comment, whether it's on SoundCloud or YouTube or Facebook, or you could just send us a DM with some anything you want to discuss, because that's what we're here for.
That's right. We have a mission for this year to get to 1,000 subscribers.
Yes.
On YouTube. And that's our mission, to get there before the end of 2020. So we want to be at 1,000 subscribers by January 1st of 2021. So if you found this content to be valuable, please subscribe to our channel, turn on notifications, and share our content so that way we can better serve you. We're going to be coming out with a lot of cool courses and products later on this year as well. So the more we can spread our word, the more we can serve people, the better. So thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of the Crusader Coaching Podcast. And until next time, stay strong and take care.